It's time now on the programme to take a look at what's grabbing headlines in the world's press. Alison Sargent joins us here in the studio. Hi, Alison.
Hi, Nadia.
You're going to be starting us off then taking a look at the coverage of the Yellow Vest movement here in France, which is, of course, dominating really all the newspapers here today.
It certainly is Saturday. This will be Act 4 of the Yellow Vest protests, as many of the papers are calling it. Violence is the main word we're seeing on a lot of the front pages today after the warning from the government yesterday concerning this weekend. Libération here talks about l'engrenage, the spiraling, the kind of gearing up of the violence. And the paper's really grappling today with whether or not that violence is justified. They talked to a few Gilets jaunes who said that they don't support the rioters, but that they do understand them. One of the people told the paper, when a dog is hungry, he ends up biting someone. And in their editorial today, the paper has a similar conclusion. They write, violence is reprehensible, but those who refuse to treat the causes of the violence, well, aren't they reprehensible also? Another paper, though, Le Parisien, takes a different stance in their editorial today. They call out both the government and the Yellow Vest protesters for being irresponsible, and they point out that these protests are illegal and have been for the past 4 weeks. They ask who is going to take the blame if the worst happens tomorrow and someone ends up killed. These protests continue to get a lot of coverage in the international press as well. I wanted to just quickly show you the front page of this week's Economist. You may recognize that photo there. That's the statue of the Marianne, the symbol of the French Republic, that was vandalized in the Arc de Triomphe last Saturday. It's now become sort of a symbol of the current chaos.
And Alison, then, in preparation for tomorrow's protests, lots of buildings in Paris are shutting down, the Eiffel Tower, the Louvre among those, but one key event is still going ahead.
That's right. This is the March for the Climate, part of a global day of action with the COP24 going on in Poland. Marches taking place across France on Saturday, in some cases in collaboration with the Yellow Vest protests. In Strasbourg, for example, in the east of France, Yellow Vest and climate protesters will be marching together around the city's Christmas market. Meanwhile, a group of politicians and social leaders has published an op-ed in Libération calling for Saturday to be a day of collective action for both environmental and social justice. Now, this partnership is significant because, of course, these Yellow Vest protests started off as a resistance to a pro-environmental policy, which was the fuel tax. And the government has really been sort of setting up this dichotomy between worrying about the end of the month versus worrying about the end of the world. Many papers, though, are pointing out that this is really a false dichotomy. The New York Times has a piece explaining that in order to be truly effective, well, climate policy cannot put the burden on the most vulnerable members of society. The paper says that's really what France's fuel tax did, and other countries should be taking note right now and learning from that mistake.
Well, also making headlines then in the kind of realm of protests here in France are these images of students who've been protesting, and they've met with a pretty strong response by the police.
Right. We've been showing these images on France 24. We see the students with their hands behind their heads on their knees as they're getting arrested. This was the top story this morning on Le Monde's website. They point out that in this video, you actually hear a man, presumably one of the police officers, saying, now there's a class that's behaving itself. Needless to say, this sparked a lot of indignation across France. Benoit Hamon, the former Socialist Party candidate, tweeted that it was chilling and inadmissible. He said, this is not the Republic to see our youth humiliated. Now, the head of the local government has responded to some of the criticism. He said, look, how are 70 police officers supposed to keep 150 students calm and quiet? I just don't know any other method.
Let's move on then, Alison, to the United States. This is where the New York Times is reporting that Donald Trump's housekeeper, or at least one of them, is an undocumented migrant.
That's right. This is a story that is raising quite a few eyebrows because we all know how the U.S. president feels about undocumented immigrants. This woman's name is Victorina Morales. She is from Guatemala, and she works at the Trump Golf Club in New Jersey. One of her jobs, as you see in this headline, was making the president's bed. Like many undocumented people, she got her job using fake documents. She says there are a number of other undocumented people working at the club, and she told the New York Times that she knows she's pretty likely to lose her job now that she's come out and said she's undocumented in the paper. She may even face deportation, but she said she wanted to come forward because she was tired of the abuse and humiliation that she and others had been facing from the U.S. president, even if she says he did always treat her pretty kindly when she saw him in person.
Nonetheless, though, what an irony, Alison. Finally, then, from you, the French aren't the only ones fearing riots this weekend. This is a story from the Netherlands. police there mobilising to deal with big crowds, but this time it's because of a birthday party.
It is, and a 15-year-old girl's birthday party, no less. This girl was hoping to have a pretty small party, actually. She sent out an invite to just a couple of her close friends on Snapchat. One of them, though, posted it publicly to Facebook, and get this, 28,000 people have expressed interest. That's an even bigger number when you consider that in this town, the population is only about a few hundred people. The craziest part, Nadia, is that this is not the first time this has happened in the Netherlands. In 2012, a similar incident in another Dutch town saw a crowd of 4,000 people gather. They had to be broken up by riot police. So because of that precedent, police now are really bracing themselves for the worst. Local officials have been calling for people to stay away. This is supposed to take place Friday night. The girl, meanwhile, has reportedly had to go into hiding, which is pretty sad for her. So I'd say I hope she can celebrate her birthday somehow.
Yeah, I hope so. I was going to say how popular she apparently is that so many people want to come out and celebrate her.
She doesn't even get to enjoy it.
Doesn't even get to celebrate. Well, thank you very much indeed. That's Alison Sargent there with our press review on the programme. If you'd like to see more from Alison and our other press reviewers, you can, as always, head to our website. That's france24.com.